And then
Thank you very much for the introduction, John. It's a pleasure to be here with Peter Shaw, who's an awesome co-presenter on this topic. This channel webinar is actually jointly hosted by both Quantum and FireEye. So we have a combination of channel partners for Quantum as well as channel partners for FireEye on the call today. And what we wanted to do, Peter and I together, is talk to you about what we're seeing in the market and with customers in terms of cybersecurity threats, and in particular shine a light on the delta between the time of intrusion and the time of discovery for some of these cyber attacks. And then you guys are channel partners for both of our companies, so we want to talk to you about expanding your business with network forensics. I'm on the storage side of the business. I also want to shine a light on what storage has to do with network forensics in the first place, because that may not be obvious. And then we want to go into how to identify, how to qualify, how to sell the joint solution. Did I miss anything on the agenda, Peter?
No, that's good, Claire. I think one thing I'd like to make sure we highlight, though, is that, you know, cybersecurity threats have been around for a long time, but what we say when we mean that today is really a new level of sophisticated threat that takes a lot more insight and effort to attack, and that's really what we're going to talk about today, those more sophisticated threats and how to approach them.
Thank you. So there's this rather famous quote by a former FBI director. I think he was up in San Francisco at an RSA conference, and he said there are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. And I find this quote really compelling because it shines a light on the fact that all of us are vulnerable. None of the industries and the verticals that we serve are immune to cyber attacks. And these threats are real. There was a Mandiant M-Trends report that came out earlier this year, and they said there's no such thing as perfect security. Determined threat actors will always find a way through the gap. Mandiant is obviously a cybersecurity firm that FireEye bought earlier this year. They're very well regarded and known for their emergency response to cyber attacks. And the point they've been making is that cybersecurity is not a niche IT issue. It is a consumer issue. It is a boardroom priority. It is something that's getting more and more attention beyond the traditional security teams. When you look in your news feeds, there are new reports every week about cyber attacks. We all know about Target. We know about Home Depot. We know about what happened to eBay earlier this year. In the news this week, the U.S. Postal Service went on record that they were victim to a data breach. And the data of the personal identifiable information for every single U.S. Postal Service employee was exposed. Some reports say it was 500,000 people had their data stolen. Other reports say up to 800,000 people. These are their names, their social security numbers, their addresses, and that's worth real money on the black market, but obviously it's concerning to all of those who were affected. When you're looking to work with customers and prospects on how to protect themselves from the different kinds of cyber attacks, it's worth trying to understand the different motivations for the people behind these attacks. And some of these motivations are obviously financial. There's been a lot of press about the credit card theft, and that's because over 500 million financial records have been stolen by hackers in the last 12 months. So it makes sense that there's been so much press about the credit card theft. But not all hackers are financially motivated. Some of these attacks are state-sponsored. Some of them have to do with corporate espionage and people looking to get information about competitors. There are some threats where they're more ideological in nature. People referred to as hacktivists who are looking to get in the way of critical infrastructure, for example. And then there are grudge attacks as well, and that's more of the typical disgruntled employee looking to make a point. So there are these different motivations. And in order to get prepared, in order to try to prevent what might happen to you, it does help to get your head in the mindset of who it is that's coming to try to infiltrate their way into your system. Now, we've observed people looking to prepare their incident response and strengthen their defenses across a number of verticals. Obviously, the federal government, critical infrastructure providers, transportation authorities. We've already talked about financial markets. The healthcare system, there's a lot of really important personal information that we all would like to keep confidential in that space. And then even universities are taking more aggressive steps to protect themselves. So Peter, working at FireEye, working in network forensics, where are you seeing cybersecurity hurt the most?
Yeah, so just to echo what you already said, Claire, we see these attacks as being widespread across all industries. And in principle, any organization which has valuable assets online is vulnerable, potentially vulnerable. If you look at this list here, this is something we've put together in our own studies, and this is just the last, 5 to 6 months worth of major organizations that have been penetrated, and just the ones that are public. FireEye is, especially through our Mandiant group, is one of the world's leading incident response organizations, so we are often called into these incidents, and we know that there are many more than this that are not public. So it really is, even the press and the visibility around events that we've seen in recent months is really just the tip of the iceberg. And Claire, we were just talking before about the NOAA case that was announced just last night and early this morning. Yet one more government organization that's fessed up to having been penetrated recently. So lots of attacks. There's really, I mentioned when we were going through the agenda with Claire that there was, I wanted to highlight what's different. And the key thing to realize is these attacks that we're talking about today are different to traditional malware attacks. These are not pieces of software that are sent out in bulk hoping to infect thousands of machines. These are highly targeted custom attacks driven by an individual, and that's typically an individual whose daytime job or their mission in their job is to come into work each day and attack the corporation they're attacking. We actually know this in particular because about 80% of all the malware or advanced attack incidents we see occur only once, which means they're highly crafted towards a particular organization. If there are elements of phishing in there to attract initial infections, they'll be highly targeted to the community of people who work in that organization, for example. So very, very targeted attacks. And the other thing I usually say to customers when I'm talking to them about these kinds of tools is, the reality is these are large criminal organizations or nation-state funded organizations. They're professionals, and they probably have more resources and more dollars to build these attacks than most enterprises do to defend against them. So it's a fundamentally different environment. That's the first thing to remember. Number two is that these attacks unfold over time in many stages. Well, that's the next slide we need. So, there's usually some initial external reconnaissance, probing around for vulnerabilities in the network. There might be a small initial penetration, which then leads to additional pieces of software which build a foothold inside the organization and assemble the tools to do reconnaissance within a corporate network, and then finally the exfiltration of some valuable data. Obviously, the most effective response is to detect that initial probing as soon as you can so that you can disrupt the whole attack early. The reality is that traditional perimeter defenses, such as firewalls and IDSs, often will not pick up these attacks because they're installed into the network in components, none of which individually looks like a threat, and they don't have familiar signatures, which, for example, firewalls are looking for. The result is that if we look at the organizations where we've gone in as a response team in the last year or so, we found that the mean number of days between an initial penetration and the recognition of an attack is over 7 months, so 229 days. And every one of these organizations had completely up-to-date antivirus signatures, completely up-to-date firewall rules, appropriately deployed IDSs, and so on. And yet, these types of penetrations, they still happen. So very, very difficult to defend against. And all of these were major, as you saw from the list on the previous page, all of these are major corporations with substantial, sophisticated, professional cybersecurity teams and a lot of dollar investment going into this. And a key statistic is the one up in the top right here. Nearly 2/3 of these companies did not themselves find that they were breached. They actually learned from some external entity, typically the FBI or the police or a bank or a financial partner, that they were penetrated. So that's the difference in the buildup of these attacks today. And then the second thing is, just one more slide, 229 days is a long time to play around inside any network. And what that means is that personalized attacker who has studied this organization and is attacking it in a very controlled and targeted way has an enormous amount of time to penetrate deeply and explore the entire network. That means that it also takes a long time to clean up after this attack. Even once you know it's there, and even if you know where it came from, you still have a lot of work involved in completely cleaning up and resolving an attack. Again, the mean time we've seen is about 32 days, and on average, for a large-sized corporation, that amounts to something like $3.5 million of direct costs. And that $3.5 million, by the way, is really just the tip of the iceberg. That's the hard, concrete, short-term cost that you can actually see. It's people and time to rebuild servers, to change passwords, to re-image disks, to define new processes which will avoid that incident happening in the future. Of course, there are a lot of other, I was going to say collateral, but they're not collateral. They're significant targeted damage, which has longer-term impacts, such as loss of customer data. We've seen a lot of that recently in the major breaches. The costs of monitoring credit card activity to see if there's actual use of stolen credit card information. Legal costs, obviously, to defend against people who are affected by the breach. And then the even longer-term costs that are very hard to quantify, such as loss of brand, reputation. You know, how many of us on this call think twice when we shop at Target today, just because of all the PR around their breach? And loss of IP, which competitors can use as well. So all of these are real impacts. And the goal that we have with, certainly in FireEye and in the network forensic space in general, is to mitigate these effects, reduce them and respond to them, clean them up as quickly as possible.
So FireEye has a broad portfolio of different cybersecurity offerings, and the area where Peter Shaw and I collaborate the most is in network forensics, and it's particularly focused on helping customers prepare their incident response. And incident response is a security term that just describes how an organization is going to handle and respond to a cyber incident. The most important thing to know about incident response when I talk to customers is that obviously they want to make a plan in advance, and a good, complete, thorough, well-thought-out plan in advance, and not be figuring it out on the fly when they're dealing with the pressure of a cyber attack. So Peter told you a few minutes ago that 2/3 of victims were notified of the breach by an external party, often law enforcement. And we actually gave a similar webinar, Peter and I together, yesterday to end users. And one of the questions that came in on the chat line is, well, how is it that law enforcement knows before an enterprise knows that a company like Home Depot or like JP Morgan Chase has been impacted? How do they find out? And one of the ways law enforcement finds out is they're actually out there monitoring these various black market sites on which all of a sudden you start seeing a flood of credit card numbers or a flood of personally identifiable information available for sale. And they're able to then track that back and figure out what the source might have been. But if a customer gets that phone call from law enforcement, the question is, what will they do? How should they handle it? And how should they get prepared in advance? So, Peter, somebody gets a phone call, a customer gets a phone call, what should they do?
Yeah, well, obviously, in an ideal world, they would then have the ability to quickly respond and go and look at the history of their network activity and figure out what might have happened. Was this a real threat? And if you've got the right forensics tool in place with the right ability to answer analytic questions that you want to ask of it and the depth of storage to look back far enough in time, then you can answer these critical questions like these ones. For example, how long have I been under attack? You know, I may have just been alerted to something that was going on, but it probably didn't just happen this morning. Can I go back and find the initial occurrence? And then once I've found the initial occurrence, can I work out, well, how active has that threat been inside my network? How many other hosts on my network might have been affected? How much lateral infection has gone on? And then what files might have been looked at or moved or copied or exfiltrated from the organization? Again, if you've got a complete record of traffic and you can go back and do a true forensics analysis, you can actually tell that. What's gone? When did it go? And then you can look for what we call indicators of compromise, which are really just signatures which indicate that some kind of malicious activity is going on. And these signatures can be fed back into your defenses to protect against future repetitions of this kind of attack. So those are the kind of things you want to be able to do, and you can do if you've got the right tools in place.
So Peter spoke a couple of minutes ago about some of the Mandiant data measuring the average time between time of intrusion and time of discovery for their customer base. Verizon comes out with an annual data breach investigations report. This year's version was published back in April, I think. And Verizon also, all of their metrics from all of their many sources worldwide, enterprise, commercial, government, a lot of people contribute data to that report. And they also stated that a majority of these security incidents and data breaches take weeks or months to discover. And so to do network forensics right, to be able to respond properly to these attacks, it's important to be able to have the data you need to investigate. In the case of JP Morgan Chase, which obviously got a lot of press over the last couple of months, the facts show that that attack went undiscovered by JP Morgan for about 2 months, and that's not uncommon.
Claire, can I just throw a comment in there? I think you and I talked about this before. JP Morgan's very public about their security resources. They have a budget of over $250 million a year and over 1,000 highly trained cybersecurity experts defending their network. And it just goes to show the sophistication of these attacks and the resources of the people doing the attack can penetrate even that kind of organization.
Well, and I think their CEO was just interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and he stated that they plan to increase their cybersecurity spending from the $250 million annually up to $500 million annually over the next 5 years. So he's going to be increasing his investments in that space.
So we expect everybody on this call to be knocking on JP Morgan's.
Well, they're not the only ones increasing their investments in this space. You were talking earlier about how the threats have changed, and they're more advanced than ever, and they're the hackers, the attackers, are very well funded themselves. So let's talk a little bit about how network forensics can help. The goal of network forensics is to look back in time. Peter, can you talk to us about the security ecosystem and how network forensics fits into that ecosystem?
Sure, and let me apologize to everybody for this fairly busy little slide, but hopefully it'll become clear as we talk through it. So
it's not a clear slide, is it?
Yeah, I thought of that as I said clear. My pronunciation correct. So, you know, forensics, just like when you watch CSI on TV, is the process of after an incident or an attack of some kind has happened, going back and figuring out how did this happen, what were the causes, and hopefully who were the attackers in an ideal situation. And usually that forensics process is triggered by some kind of alert. Claire's already talked about alerts coming from outside your organization, say from the FBI or the police. They might come from your bank, recognizing some unusual activity in your accounts. They might come from a business partner, seeing some of your information that they know to be private out in the public domain. So there could be all kinds of reasons why you get indication that there's been some kind of attack. The other way you could get indication is from the network defenses you've already got in place. Every sizable organization today will have firewalls, they'll have IDSs, they'll have antivirus tools, They'll have SIMs of various kinds. And all of these things are sitting there in the network, watching for malicious or anomalous activity and raising alerts. And somewhere in a data center, in a SOC, is someone sitting there in front of a SIM screen seeing all of those alerts pop up. And what you'd like to do is be able to figure out which of those alerts are meaningful, which are just noise that you could filter out later on once you know what caused them. And the way to do that is with forensics as well. So in all of those cases, what you're getting is someone raising a hand or some device raising a hand and saying something just happened. And what this diagram is just trying to show that the right kind of forensics tool, and obviously the one that we have, not only works when you proactively go and look start the forensics process yourself, but can also respond automatically to alerts from devices like a Palo Alto firewall or a SourceFire IDS, and automatically present the traffic from the forensic database which actually initiated that alert, so that the analyst can quickly say, okay, that does look strange, or no, I can see what that is, it's anomalous behavior, and we can filter that out in the future. But we think it's key for a forensics product, to be able to work with many other devices that are already in a vendor's network. That protects their investment and enables them to build on what they've already got.
And given that you put your CSI reference in there, I got to add my reference to George Carlin. This network forensics data needs to be stored so that you have the data you need to look back in time. So any of you who remember that famous George Carlin routine about, I need a place for my stuff, obviously there needs to be a place for the network traffic data, which is why we partner with, as a storage company, with FireEye around this solution. And it's not just any storage. You need the right kind of high-performance, scalable, shared storage infrastructure. And we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But first, I want to make sure everybody's clear on the value of network forensics. And one way to think about it is as a black box or a flight data recorder for your network traffic that you capture and that you preserve. And once you have that, it enables you to do three things. And the first is, when you get that phone call from law enforcement, you can look back in time, look at the data, analyze, and figure out what happened, and then reduce the time to resolution of the attack, because you're able to investigate so much more quickly and really figure out how things transpired. Was there any lateral movement? What data was stolen, et cetera. The second piece of value is that once you understand what happened, you can strengthen your defenses so that you can stop it from happening again, stop that particular type of attack from happening again. And the third piece of value is, of course, you can use this network traffic data and all of the forensic analysis tools to proactively hunt for suspicious and anomalous behavior in advance, even before you know that there might be an incident. So, Peter, can you explain how exactly this network traffic data enables customers to look back in time?
Indeed, I can. Claire, I can't help myself. I have to say I thought of a completely different George Carlin skit when you brought his name up, but it's completely inappropriate for this audience.
Does it have something to do with words and language?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, words I can't remember right now. So.
Okay, good. We're being recorded, Peter.
Okay, all right. Sorry, back on track.
Be good.
So the next 2 or 3 slides, I'm actually just going to, they're just snapshots I've taken from the user interface for the FireEye forensics tool, which has the very imaginative name of the IA system, which stands for Investigation Analysis System, but we're only allowed 2 letters in FireEye, so we have IA and PX as the 2 parts of this system. And this could be, you know, on a previous slide I talked about alerts coming up from your firewall, for example. If the analyst in the data center clicks on those alerts, they'll immediately drop over to the FireEye system, and this window will pop up and begin to show them data about what was the traffic that caused that alert. They might also want to go and do some proactive searching, as Claire just mentioned, not wait for an alert, but be constantly looking for potential anomalous behavior. So you might be looking at a screen like this, and in this particular one, we're seeing, you know, where's the traffic coming from geographically. What mix of traffic type is it? What are the most common domains being used to get DNS lookups, and so on. So this is the type of information that you might want to then click on down through to get to the next level of detail. So one click, and the analyst might be down now. One of the categories on the previous slide was a number of text files. So we might want to click down and see, well, why are we seeing text files from this set of domains? And here it'll show that we've seen 3 text files going past in the time that we're looking at. And we might then want to click on, okay, I probably shouldn't be seeing text files. Let's click on that link and see where it takes us. And when we do that, we've now gone all the way down to the actual packet store, the physical store of the traffic on the FireEye system, and we can actually look at it just as if we were using a tool like Wireshark. We've designed the tool to emulate Wireshark because every network analyst, every security analyst in the world uses Wireshark every day. So in 2 clicks, they've gone from an alert or some anomalous indication of behavior down to looking at the actual packets that caused that anomaly. That's something that traditionally could have taken certainly hours, perhaps even days, if there was a lot of traffic to search through manually. And then when they've looked at it and said, you know what, that does look suspicious, let me see what was in those text files, they can click on it once more and actually recreate the text file or the web page or the email or the DNS session and actually see what it was that was going by at the time and what the user at that IP address and in that particular session was doing. So that's just how a forensics response would proceed. And the key thing is to be able to do that very, very quickly so you can get right down to that point of seeing what went on and then, if you need to, ask subsequent queries to qualify or investigate further. But the key thing is to be able to look to find that point very, very, very quickly, even if you've got vast amounts of data stored away. So, you know, at the end of the day, my job is to sell FireEye forensics solutions. So when I talk to people, I always try and say there are 3 key things to remember about the solution that we bring to the table that we believe makes it unique and gives us a leadership position. There are other forensic solutions in the marketplace, and they've been there longer because NPulse is a relatively new company, and we're new in FireEye post-acquisition. But we do think we bring some unique things to the table. Number 1 is speed. We can record up to 20 gigabits per second of traffic on a sustained basis while an analyst is searching that data at the same time without losing a single packet. So very high integrity, high speed recording. Even more importantly, we can search it incredibly quickly. When an analyst types in some kind of query, show me this set of data which I want to look at, you want to get an answer back quickly. In large database situations, we have scenarios where we've returned that data in under a minute, and competing products have taken 20 hours. So it's really a completely different order of magnitude in search performance. This is, in fact, the core IP that FireEye acquired when they bought us. So that's speed. The second thing is scale. Scale really means how long can I record data for at speed? How long can I keep doing this? And therefore, how far back in time can I allow you to look? Claire and I sort of talk about these different time frames all the time, but everybody we talk to wants to gather more data than they can today. Usually it's just too difficult to search or too expensive to store with the systems they currently have. And I often talk to people who've got 1 or 2 days of storage. They'd love a week. They'd love 2 weeks. They'd love 30 days. In the government space, we have deals we work on together where they want 90 days or 180 days. So that means you have to have a very flexible, scalable, high-performance storage solution to stream that data to. And that's where our partnership with Quantum comes in. It delivers that for us. So speed, and then keeping that speed up to scale so you can look over a long time. And then the third thing is openness. Again, I showed you that ecosystem chart before, which showed that we can work with almost any security product that's already in your network. We have formal alliances with SourceFire, with Palo Alto, with Tipping Point, with ArcSight, with McAfee. And the reason we do that and the way we can do that is because we have a completely open architecture, so that we have an open API, we have an open data format, and we make that available to our partners. So speed, scale, and openness are the things that make the solution we're talking about here unique and compelling for your customers.
Okay, so now that Peter's talked to you about why FireEye-PX makes so much sense for network forensics, I promised I'd spend a few minutes talking about the role of storage in network forensics, and in particular, why Quantum and why StorNext 5. And so the three things I focus people on when I talk to customers, when I talk to partners about what StorNext can do for these network forensics workflows. StorNext is designed for fast capture. StorNext is used across many different verticals and many different use cases. It is the go-to storage infrastructure for media and entertainment, which, like network forensics, like network traffic, has big sets of big files that need to be ingested at speed and that need to be played back at speed. And in the case of network forensics, you do not want any dropped packets at all. So one of the things that's of great value is that we can keep up with FireEye-PX easily. And the reason drop packets matter is if you do drop a packet, then your understanding of an entire network session is effectively broken. And it may be the packet that you dropped that you need to really investigate and understand what happened. The other thing that StorNext is designed for is, from the very beginning, we've been focused on big sets of big files. And so we can scale. Many of our deployments are in the petascale, and we enable shared access to these big files at speed. And it's just what we do, whether you're talking about satellite imagery or video workflows or genomic sequencing. This is what we're focused on. And then the third piece of value that's really important for us is, and for our customers, is our ability to do cost-effective tiering. In the network forensic space, people are really I would say pleasantly surprised, because some of these security teams are not familiar with all the different storage options that are out there. But when they find out they can retain more network traffic data within the same budget by using a combination of disk and tape, that's a really strong selling point. StorNext enables you to not only tier to a more cost-effective form of storage such as tape, but to do so while the file appears to be where it always was. And so the access is transparent. The analytics application, FireEye-PX, is really oblivious to the fact, or to whether the file is stored on disk or stored on tape. So my 3 points that I talk to customers about are our ability to do fast capture, our ability to scale to these big sets of big files, and our ability to do cost-effective tiering. So now let's talk a little bit about why FireEye and Quantum together. Well, actually, no. Before we get there, Peter, we've already covered the cybersecurity threat, talking about the need to plan incident response, the role of data, and specifically network traffic data in investigating a cyber attack. Talk to me about FireEye. What is your mission?
Yeah, so just quickly, and obviously the FireEye folks on this call will know this, but why are we credible to stand up and say that in this world of these new sophisticated, more complex threat types, are we better placed than someone else to help our customers respond to that? We have a strategy which we call reimagining security, and it's really because we believe a new approach is needed. Obviously, the old approach is not working. And it's not just products and services, it's technology, of course, but it's also the intelligence of our organization and the expertise that we have in our organization. We think the proof of that is that 16 of the last 22 zero days reported in the market were discovered by FireEye teams. So we think it's much more than just shipping products. And we believe that whole package, all of that, products plus technology, intelligence, team, is what's really needed to basically reduce that horrible statistic that I put right up the start, that 229 days that typically pass between an initial attack and the detection of that attack, and then the 32 days beyond that to resolve it. So our ultimate goal as a corporation is much earlier detection, very quick detection, and then the ability to go from detection to response and remediation in minutes, not in 32 days. That's really what we're focused on as a mission for the organization.
So at Quantum, we're focused on enabling customers' information workflows. We're in the storage infrastructure business, and to some people, storage is not a sexy, exciting thing. But it's an enabler, and it's a very important enabler to some critical use cases, whether those use cases are in government, are in oil and gas, are in media and entertainment, are in video surveillance, or, as I work with Peter, are in the area of cybersecurity and network forensics. We're focused on enabling people to get the performance they need with their storage so they can capture and ingest, and then share that data, enable the kind of analytics or processing that are required, and then give them ways and tools that they can use to not only protect their data and make sure they have the relevant disaster recovery or multiple copies, but to enable them to archive cost effectively, giving them more choice than just continuing to buy more disk. In the case of network forensics, we're all about delivering the high-speed capture with zero-drop packets, enabling the kind of sharing to go on so that the FireEye, what Peter called the IA, the investigative analytics tools, can operate on the data. And some customers also have some homegrown tools that they want to use to proactively look at the data. And we can share it to multiple applications easily. StoreNext just does that. And then that ability to preserve more data in the same budget, which is really critical given the lag, the delta between the time of intrusion and the time of discovery. If you can use the same budget and store many more weeks of network traffic data, that may make all the difference in terms of your responsiveness to a cyber attack, because it can make the difference between having the data you need and not knowing what happened. In terms of the joint solution, together FireEye and Quantum have this tightly integrated solution that does the job. Our StoreNext client gets installed on the FireEye PX network forensics platform that does the actual network traffic capture. FireEye is clearly an industry leader in network forensics. That's why they wanted to be one, which is why they bought Impulse Technologies earlier this year. And they're focused on this ultra-fast network traffic capture and indexing and analysis. And we deliver the storage infrastructure from this industry-leading platform that enables that workflow. So we're both extremely focused on making sure we provide best-of-breed solutions and help customers figure out how to get prepared for these kinds of attacks. Peter, did I miss anything about the joint solution that you want to shine a light on?
No, I think that's good, Claire. I think we should move on to telling people how they can actually go and talk to their customers about this and how to find the right customer.
Okay. So identifying and qualifying opportunities. So Peter, talk to us about an ideal customer profile.
So we've talked a lot about the fact that these are sophisticated attacks, and to defend against or respond to sophisticated attacks, you need sophisticated tools, and that means you need sophisticated teams, cybersecurity teams. So when you're looking for a customer for a FireEye Quantum forensics solution, you're looking for an organization that has a sophisticated, mature, a dedicated security team in place. You are not going to sell these tools to your corner grocery store. These are typically going to be mid to large size enterprises, obviously government organizations, and telcos or large service providers, ISPs. You're looking for people who know how to use this kind of tool. Secondly, or perhaps even better is a good target is people who've already got security forensics tools of some kind. We believe that we bring a whole new generation of capability to the market. So people who are already using competing tools will have a very good understanding of what they want, but what they're not getting. And in our experience, competing tools are slow, they don't scale, or if they do scale, adding storage, they're incredibly expensive. So you're really looking for skilled teams who are looking for more capability than they've got today.
So who's the buyer? What are when you're looking to prospect for these kinds of opportunities, what are the titles for the people that you want to connect with in enterprise?
Yeah, obviously, it's a security sector, so you're looking for people with security or incident response or incident detection in their title. CISO is probably the most common organizational head. The people who would actually be looking at and evaluating these types of products will typically be analysts, security analysts, people like that. So those are the kind of names to look out for. And And because these people are skilled already, technically, they understand this area, the types of qualifying questions you want to ask for them are, assume that they know what they're looking for. So you're not going to, I've never met a customer who I've had to teach about what forensics is or why it's important. So these are going to be people who know what they want. So it's more important to ask questions that calibrate the capabilities they've got now and what they really want. So, let's assume they're doing some kind of traffic capture today, either with a competitive tool or with homegrown tools, which is common. How are they doing it today? Are they capturing everything? As Claire just said, if you drop even a single packet, you're blind to that particular session, which just might have been the one containing a threat. So are they getting all of the data? How quickly can they look at the data? If it's taking hours and hours to do a simple search to respond to a single incident, then you're going to have to ignore a lot of the incidents or the alerts that you get. How far back in time can they look now? Probably it's just a few hours, if that. Most people want much more than that, especially in light of some of these high-profile cases and the fact that the infections may have been in place for months at a time. So they want to be able to go back and look at when was the first occurrence. So we would ask them questions like, well, ideally, how far would you like to be able to look back? And that's where we get those 7 to 30-day ranges as an ideal number. And then you would want to say, so, okay, how do you respond to alerts today? What do you do when you get an alert? And then that leads to a discussion of what do you really want to do in an ideal world with the right tool. Of course, some of these people will have ideas or immediate questions. We say objections here, but they're probably more qualifying questions. Some people might say, look, I've invested in firewalls and IDSs. Don't they already protect me? And the reality is, the answer is no. There are still many attacks that are based on signature-based malware. There's a lot of, there are thousands of these attacks that are still around from years ago. And of course, they need to be filtered out. And your IDS and your firewall do that. But it's the stuff that gets through that you have to worry about, and that's when you have to do true forensics. How do we differ from other vendors? Well, we've talked about that several times. It's really, remember it again, speed, scale, and openness. We make it easier for you to do more easily. FireEye customers would say, well, I've already got NX, I've already got HX, I've already got all those other two-letter acronyms from FireEye. Yeah, that's true, and those are mostly focused on either a short-term forensics capability or looking for anomalous behavior. So they're more about raising alerts. The PX, the part that Impulse brings to FireEye, is the forensics response to those alerts. So it's a natural extension of the capabilities that FireEye is providing. And then the same is true for the SIM. Whether they have Splunk or ArcSight or Nitro or whatever the SIM is, the SIM is just an aggregator of alerts from all across the network. You still need to be able to respond, and that ability to respond is what a network forensic solution from FireEye gives them.
So let's talk a little bit about selling the joint solution from Quantum and FireEye. And one of the things I want to make sure to cover with all of you, since you're on the channel side and you're going to work with us to help sell this joint solution, is how do you size the storage piece of the equation? So one of the things that both FireEye and Quantum recommend to customers is that they actually measure, not just for a particular day, because their traffic activity may vary from one day of the week to another day, but perhaps over a week, measure what their sustained traffic rates are so that we can size how much storage they would need for whatever their retention is. If somebody says, well, I have a 10 gig network, that doesn't necessarily tell you how much traffic activity they have. And so when you measure it, if their sustained rate is, say, 1 gigabit per second, that equates to about a little bit more than 10 terabytes a day if they sustain that rate over the entire 24-hour period. Likewise, if they have sustained traffic of 10 gigabits per second, well, that's about 100 terabytes a day. Now, Peter mentioned earlier, he commented on what we observe and what we recommend. Many organizations pretty much every prospect that my sales team talks to, they come back and kind of share with me what they've learned. And in almost every case, they've found that the customer wants to retain more network traffic data than they do now. And then our recommended retention to them is somewhere between 7 to 30 days, but it really varies from case to case. It depends on their assessment of the threat, their capabilities, and what they're trying to accomplish. But what's consistent is they're all looking to increase the amount of network traffic data that they are preserving. Peter, did I miss anything here?
Nope, that's good.
Okay. Now here's a real-world Visio, and I put it in the deck because a picture speaks 1,000 words, and some of you on the phone might be on the technical sales or the pre-sales side of our partners. And so solution architects tend to love seeing these kinds of diagrams that they would be providing to the customers and the prospects to depict what actually gets deployed. Now this particular Visio is for a really large configuration and that had 40 gigabit per second of sustained network traffic. Now that's big. And they were looking to capture and initially preserve 7 days of this really huge amount of network traffic. And they were looking to the possibility of potentially extending, increasing their retention in the future, possibly by adding tape. But there's no tape in this diagram. It's all disk, and you can even see there's 4 different FireEye PX capture appliances in the diagram in the center, as well as 2 petabytes of raw storage to deliver this or to capture this network traffic. Peter, do you want to talk a little bit about what you see in this Visio?
Well, just very quickly, it's really just a real case instance of that general purpose ecosystem diagram we showed earlier. You can see up on the left there, we're tapping the egress point to the internet, and there's all kinds of other devices, an IDS and an anti-malware device and a firewall sitting there. But a copy of the traffic is being sent over to the PX devices, which are the actual traffic recording device from FireEye, and they're indexing that data and streaming it to the quantum storage array. And what that gives is the ability for the analyst sitting there in the data center to go back when he gets an alert, say from his firewall, to go back and look at exactly not just the incident that the firewall triggered on, but the whole history of that type of traffic in the network beforehand. A quick example would be maybe the firewall detects an incident of a malicious PDF attached to a dialogue. The analyst might want to say, okay, that was in fact a malicious document and we did want to exclude that from our network. Let's see if that exact document, that exact MD5 signature has ever been seen before in the 7 days of storage that we've got here. And that's the kind of search that he could do quickly to try and find if there's been an earlier infection. So that's a real world scenario, and this is a real customer diagram that we're looking at.
So Peter, I know that we're getting close to the top of the hour, and we need to save some time for our 5 coffee drawings for the Starbucks cards. Let's talk a little bit about the competitive landscape. Okay. Something happened to this slide. It's missing the vertical and horizontal X and Y axis, but just imagine that the X and Y lines are there, guys.
And that. So the vertical axis here is just saying, you know, what's the average traffic rate on your network that you need to be recording at to make sure you capture every packet. That's important. And the horizontal axis is just how long do you need to record for, and how many petabytes of data do you want to be able to record. So, you know, there are a lot of people who play somewhat in this packet storage and forensics place, and many of you will recognize some of these names. Most of these players are able to do a few gigabits per second, which is fine if you've got 1 gigabit of traffic. And if you only want to record data for a few hours a day or so, it's not going to work at all if you had 10 gig links, for example. So that's the first set of folks that we see out there. The second one is some of the more traditional players like Nixon, but they've brought newer capability to the market where they can get up to around 10 gigabits per second. But again, it's just JBOD local storage. They can do that for a few hours, and the performance drops when you turn on analytics and search and so on. The longest player in this market is way out here on the right, and that's a company called NetWitness, which is part of the EMC RSA group. They really actually defined this market about 5 years ago now. So the biggest problem they have is that they have very low performance. They were designed for a 1 gig or less world, and that's where their performance is today. They can keep recording data because they have a relationship, obviously, with their parent company, EMC, and can use their SAN storage. However, it's incredibly expensive storage, and in fact, it's rebranded for security, even though it's just the same hardware. So they have a cost and a performance issue. If we look at the Npulse solution, all of our customers, major customers that we have today, have tested us extensively. We were a small company prior to FireEye, and large corporations that are our customers do not invest in small companies without rigorously testing their hardware. So we have total confidence in that 20 gigabits per second performance. And then when we get together with Quantum, we can continue that 20 gigabits performance for as long as customers want. So this is all about the capture speed. We really can occupy those top 2 quadrants for as long as customers need to be able to record.
Thank you. Now, I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to give you guys some eye candy. If you think collateral is eye candy, that is. There is a joint solution brief available from Quantum on the Alliance portal. FireEye is publishing to their fuel station a joint solution brief as well with very similar content, but the typical FireEye branding that promotes our joint solution for network forensics. On our Alliance portal at Quantum, we've got a sales guide that includes questions to identify the opportunity. Similarly, FireEye is going to be publishing a quick reference guide on their fuel station that helps channel partners and salespeople understand how to prospect and how to identify these solutions and what the needs and the benefits are. Any of you who are looking for reading materials for Saturday night to learn even more about this space, I actually think the 60-page Verizon Data Breach Investigations report on the left is a fabulous read. It's even got references to Pink Floyd in it. It's written very accessibly and yet has very rich content. The Economist also had a wonderful 10-page spread back in July, a special report on cybersecurity. And then FireEye has a definitive guide to next-gen threat protection that I think is also worthwhile. So there's a whole bunch of areas in which you can spin up. Before I hand over to John to do the coffee drawing, I just want to highlight 5 ways that channel partners can get involved in expanding your business with network forensics. The first is obviously to learn more, and I've got some links on the next page. The second is just go get enabled. Go to the FireEye Fuel Station portal. Go to the Quantum Alliance site. We've got a bunch of materials there for you about the joint solution. Or you can contact your channel rep to get access to the FireEye Activation Kit, or what we at Quantum call the Cybersecurity Campaign Kit, if you want to start prospecting for these opportunities. Or contact your channel rep if you want to co-host a lunch and learn, just to kind of raise awareness with customers about what we offer. And then those of you who are Quantum partners know that we have spiffs available for StoreNext, where you can get $250 for in-person meetings, resulting in registration. That's for both the salesperson and the pre-salesperson. And then obviously 500 more when you make the sale. So there are spiffs available too to any partner who engages on this. John, I know we're almost at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you for the opportunity to share this information with our partners. Thank the FireEye team for inviting their partners, and Peter, it's obviously always fun to co-present with you. Here are some assets, quantum.com/cybersecurity, or go on to FireEye and go to their Enterprise Forensics page to find out more. And then I've got Peter's and my email addresses on the screen as well if you want to follow up on any questions. So John, should we do the quick coffee drawing?
Yeah, so real quick, here's our 5 winners: Alan Eady, Don Shokin, John Rayson, Stephen Medina, and Karen Williams. So those are our 5 winners for today.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thanks to everybody who attended today, and thanks to Claire and Peter for a great presentation. And we'll see you next time on another one of our channel webinars.
Thank you. And if you guys have questions at all, just let us know. Thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye.